You're listening to Girls with Grafts, a burn community podcast created by Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, a leading nonprofit dedicated to supporting the burn community. In this podcast, we'll talk with burn survivors, share resources to help with supporting and improving burn recovery, and discuss how to prevent burn injuries. Here are your hosts, burn survivors and Phoenix Society's marketing team, Amber Wilcox and Rachel Kudlak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Girls with Grafts. I am Rachel Kudlak. I'm one of the hosts of the show, and today I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Amber Wilcox.
Hello there. Excited to be here today. How are you?
I am doing good. I can't believe we're recording episodes for season 9 of the podcast, and I'm very excited that we're both here today, and we have a really exciting guest lined up for today's show.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as I was getting ready to join, and I'm like, I think that you guys have seen me through 2 pregnancies because I'm pretty sure that we've already done this one time, and here we are on number 2. So it made me laugh because I was like, it's still going. We're on season 9, so exciting to kick it off. But I was like, I know I've been in and out lately. Things have been chaotic over here, but excited, yes, that we've made it. Today's podcast, exciting, is powered by Buses by the Beach. Buses by the Beach is a community of VW bus enthusiasts based in West Michigan. They come together to camp, host amazing events, and raise funds to support Phoenix Society. Mark your calendars for Bus Boo 2026. That sounds exciting. Happening October 2nd through the 4th in Door, Michigan. I'm very jealous because I feel like I definitely wish I had been able to attend one of these.
Yes, I know the Buses by the Beach events always look like such a blast. I'm not much of a camper, though, I will say, but I'm down for music and hanging out with the community. So that part always sounds so much fun. Well, without further ado, let me welcome on today's guest. So today we are welcoming on Tracy Smaldino, who is a trauma survivor, author, keynote speaker, podcast host, and the founder of Trauma Rockstars, a platform built on the belief that your trauma doesn't define you, it refines you. Tracy's story begins as the sole survivor of a fatal car accident that left her with severe burns as a child, and years later, a survivor of sexual assault. For years, she carried her trauma in silence. When she finally leaned into her healing journey, everything changed. She turned her pain into purpose, and Trauma Rockstars was born. As a burn survivor, Tracy brings a deeply personal understanding to her work and an unshakable belief that every person has a rock star inside them. Sometimes they just need someone to hand them the mic. So welcome on, Tracy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Hi, Tracy. So I'm really excited to have you on today. But to get us started, we always ask a little bit more about your initial burn injury. We've asked all of the survivors on the show. So if you don't mind, I know Rachel just gave us a brief overview, but we like to kind of share with the different survivors that have joined and listened. How you categorize yourself as a burn survivor, as we all know that there are categories of burn survivors and how you were injured, what that burn looks like, and so on.
Well, I categorize myself as a burn thriver, not a survivor anymore because I'm a thriver now, but I was 12 when I was in my auto accident. Both my cousins didn't make it. And I was burned on 70% of my body, 2nd and 3rd degree burns. And, I always say back then I was 12 years old. I was probably 75 pounds, so 70% was a lot, because people like now my scars are still pretty bad, but it doesn't look like 70% because I'm an adult now, I grew up, but it was bad. I mean, as you know, your journey really doesn't start till you get out of the hospital, because then you've got years of surgeries, reconstructive surgeries, and, everything. And back then this happened, I was 12 years old. So it was many, many years ago. We didn't have the sources and resources we have now for treatments. Like lasers didn't exist. It was pretty tough. And even I remember even back then when I was recovering, even going through like my debridement sessions, they didn't sedate you back for those like they do now. They'll give you, some kind of like conscious sedation or something. They didn't do any of that back then. So it's come so far over the years. But like anybody who's been through trauma, I suppressed it for decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was that like for you just growing up? Obviously, when you're 12, about to be a teenager, those are really big years for anyone, let alone someone who just had a major burn injury. So, even with you talking about kind of not, I don't want to say not owning it, but not kind of suppressing that emotional and maybe even a little of the physical recovery. What was that like for you as a teenager and then growing up?
Yeah, it was really tough. Because, I was burned on my face and the rest of my body, I remember kids are so cruel, and I remember kids used to drive by my house and yell Scarface. And, they would like kids I didn't even know, but they, kids are just awful, and it was really tough and just the pain, the scar tissue. And I'm, of course, because anything that happens to me has to be extreme, I keloid really bad. I'm just one of those, people that keloid really, really bad. So I had to have so many surgeries just releasing the tension that would form in the scar tissue. So it felt like I was, and they tried so many different things back then to help smooth out the scars and do things like that, but just nothing seemed to work because my skin wouldn't cooperate. I mean, my one knee particularly was so bad, like my skin grafts would not take. And, you go through years after, still healing from it. And when you go through burns, a lot of people, I don't think realize, that the rest of your life, you suffer like extreme cold and extreme heat. And I live in Florida. So
I do too. Where are you living in Florida?
I'm just south of Tampa. Where are you?
Okay. I'm in Ormond Beach, so I'm on the other side, but it's hot here. We talked about this last season a little bit. It's hot.
Oh, it's hot. And the heat is way worse than the cold because you can't, people don't understand, like your skin just does not breathe. You can't cool off like, like most people can. And even if you go to the beach, you're like, oh, well, you can go into the water and cool off. But the beach is 5 minutes from me and it's 90 degrees. So how is that going to cool me off? So there's so many, and when the humidity kicks in, forget it. You're miserable, and you can get heat stroke and heat exhaustion so quickly, it hits you without any warning. And, and you go out and people want to go out with your friend. You want to go out with your friends and you want to have fun and you want to, but all of a sudden, you don't want to be like the buzzkill because all of a sudden you're getting heat exhaustion and you've got to leave. So, and it affects me still to this day. And I'm like, why do I live in Florida? I love it here, but you just have to know where you're at and stay in the air condition, and because it's so much more than just staying hydrated.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting. Here in Florida, when you're pregnant, you can apply for a disabled parking permit. And normally, I am fully capable. I'm good. I don't need this, but I think being a burn survivor and also being as pregnant as I am when it's 109 as a feel like outside, I did go and get one. And there are some days where I'm literally just like, I can't walk from the back of the parking lot. Like it is so hot right now that you just can't handle it. But I also feel like and we've not talked about this on the show, Rachel, but I think that burn survivors like talk about recognizing it as a disability. Like there are in the Florida heat, like sometimes it's just so unbearably hot, like you're overheating, especially if you're going, we don't use it when it's like, you know, I'm going to the grocery store and I'm popping in really quick. It's like when you're in this big parking lot where there's hundreds and hundreds of cars and you're walking through this hot, like it is absolutely unbearable. And I think it's that we actually talked to, what was the gentleman's name, Rachel, who we just talked to last season about the heat?
Dr. Craig
right?
Crandall. Yep.
Yeah. And he was talking a lot, and I had a lot of questions to ask him specifically because he was talking about like cooling modalities. And I got off that podcast, Rachel, and I ran to my husband. I was like, did you know that like, and there are so many little things about the heat that you don't realize. The last time I went to Disney, it was really hot, and we brought, just because Craig said so, we brought like fans, but we brought like squirt bottles too. Because he was like, he made a great point that like water and fans combined can really help cool you down so much more. And so there's so many little like tips that he had. We'll have to link that in the show notes. But yeah, people don't realize like being in here in Florida, it's like our winter. We hide inside the AC and don't come out until it's like ready to be cooler, because I'm telling you, it's so hot lately. It's getting that unbearable season.
The heat hit early down here this year, because usually it's July and August, and I'm like, okay, I can get through the 2 months. But just to add another layer to everything, when I had my accident, I lived in Las Vegas.
Oh,
it was in July.
It's very hot. Yes.
So I don't know what it is with me with the heat. Like I lived in Vegas. Now I'm down in Florida, but it was awful. Like it was awful. And I remember having just to cool off the car with the air condition to get in there. And sometimes the air conditioner wasn't working properly. And it's terrible. Like I don't think people realize, and this is, it's just, you have to have a different level of empathy for that, because of course we still want to have fun. We still want to go to the beach. We still want to go swimming in the pool. We still want to do the fun things, but it always adds a layer of, oh crap, am I going to go down hard?
We were just buying a car this past week, and I thought about this. My husband, and they were like, well, do you need the remote start? You know, the higher package has the remote start. And normally I'd be like, well, you know, is it that big of a deal? But I mean, some cold states understand this too. But like in Florida, if you have a very like hot day, the inside of your car could be 130 degrees or higher before you get into it. So yes, like the remote start was a requirement for me. I was like, you can't get in your car when it's 130 degrees. Like you have to start it ahead of time, and it's so much easier when you can start it before you even get to the parking lot. So 100%, it is a requirement here, but yeah, people don't realize it. Well, I want to switch gears a bit. I want to talk a little bit about what helped you kind of begin to lean into healing instead of just carrying that trauma in silence. I know both from a burn survivor perspective, but I know also we talked a little bit about sexual assault, and that does have a connotation of kind of carrying that in silence. And so I'd love to talk for a little bit about what helped you, lean into that and realize that it's time to not carry that alone.
Yeah, well, honestly, I suppressed it all for decades. I really didn't start my healing journey until really 6 years ago. And I don't know if you guys were, but I actually worked as a peer supporter for Phoenix Society many, many years ago when I was working at University of Michigan is when I first got introduced to Phoenix Society, because I worked in trauma burn there. And I worked as a peer supporter. And even then, as much as I could bring to other, patients that were going through it, I still hadn't really healed. But I didn't know it yet. So 6 years ago, when the pandemic hit, I started meditating. And I started seeing some little hints of information that would come, that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever really dealt with any of this stuff, and I'm a mess. And I had been carrying, and I'd never put a label on it, I had been carrying survivor's guilt for 40 years. Because, I lost both my cousins that day. And when I had my accident, it was a really, really high profile case. It was all over the news. So there was tons of media and police involved. So 3-4 years later, when I got sexually assaulted at a high school party, the last thing I wanted to do was tell my parents, because I was afraid there was going to be news involved again, the police involved again. My parents, were going to pull me out of school. And those were my friends that have been with me through my whole journey from my accident. And so I was scared and ashamed. So I never even told this. So I just told my parents about that 2 years ago. And so when I started meditating, I really kind of went all in, and I found some really amazing guided meditations on YouTube that are free for anyone who wants them, and some practitioners that I really resonated with. And I started getting all this information, and it took about a couple weeks, and I realized I was a mess. I didn't realize I was a mess, because you're just going through your life, and you don't, you keep people that go through trauma, they try and keep themselves really busy. They're people pleasers. And so I hadn't realized that I hadn't really dealt with a lot of it, especially the sexual assault part and the survivor's guilt part. And so I was like, oh crap. And we avoid healing a lot because of fear. A lot, it's scary to think about, and it's not for the weak at heart at all to go through a healing journey. But I knew I had to, because I had just been kind of floating through life, and I wasn't being my authentic self. And I didn't even know what the hell I was supposed to be, who I was. My self-esteem was shot. I didn't know my self-worth. There was just, you go down the list, and I was textbook for all of it. So I started on this journey, and, I found some interesting modalities that helped me, but meditation was the one area that has really got me through it. And I still meditate every day to this day.
And that's great that you found what really resonated and what works for you, and you're still practicing that. And I think, all survivors can really relate to even that, just pushing down those emotions. And to your point, it's, trauma survivors tend to be people pleasers and don't want to bring up those emotions, and even can mask that with trying to help others without maybe even realizing, some of the help that they need themselves. So.
And I think, we take, what happened to us wasn't our fault. I mean, there's accidents in life happen. And I never played the victim. I was never like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Because I feel like I would never want this to happen to anybody else. So why not me? I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. So what lessons can I learn from it? And it all stemmed down to getting in touch with who I really am, and understanding that a lot of choices that I've made in my life, decisions I've made, relationships I've had, even jobs that weren't good, didn't work out, were all related to me not dealing with my trauma. So when I started really going in and digging deep and realizing that a lot of it just had to do with the energy I was putting out in the world and how I was feeling about myself, and that positive self-talk, when you look in the mirror, it affected everything in my life. So I started getting all these answers, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, now I understand why I was dating that person. Now and it was a gift that gave me all these answers. And then I realized I had wasted all these decades not really living. I was just floating through life. So I had to do even some self-forgiveness, because we all make bad choices, and we all, have these things that happen, and we don't understand why. Like, why am I putting up with crap from people when I know I don't deserve to be treated that way? Well, because it's part of going through trauma. And so I actually had to forgive myself for a lot because, I didn't have the tools I needed to heal. But when I realized that this positive self-talk and the self-esteem has to come from really deep within me, that's when my life started changing. And now I wouldn't have been able to talk to you guys about this five years ago. I wouldn't have been able to sit and talk about it without getting anxiety, and your nervous system starts acting up, and you have to really be in touch with the cues your body's giving you. And it's been a long journey, but it's been so rewarding. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to try and help other people if I can.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us more about your brand, the Trauma Rock Stars, and your podcast, and kind of where the idea came from, how it all started. Just tell us more about that.
Well, most trauma survivors like to, like I said, keep themselves very busy. A lot of them live in very loud cities. They move a lot. They have very crazy, busy careers. So I worked in the music industry. I couldn't have picked a more perfect environment to ignore my trauma, because you can't get much louder than that. And I worked in the industry for a very long time, and I don't anymore, but I loved it. But that's where Trauma Rock Stars was born from, because, in the music industry, you're like, I was surrounded by rock stars all the time, but what's a rock star? It's somebody who is just trying to be a better version of themselves, that's trying to improve themselves, is trying to learn and grow. And no matter where you're at in your healing journey, if you're trying, you're a rock star. So that's where the birth of Trauma Rock Stars came from.
I love that. That's amazing.
Fun. I understand that you relate your healing journey to a concert. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Oh, I do. So everything about me is music. And I grew up in a very musically oriented family. So my whole life, I breathe and bleed music. And then working in the business, I relate everything, because I was thinking about the years, and I was like, the 18-hour days, and there were load ins and load outs. And I started thinking, wait a minute. So each show I did a load in, load out, but what about us healing and what we're taking in and what we're letting go of? So now I relate every episode. So I've got the load in, load out episode. I just finished recording the groupie, because I always tell people, I'm like, remember, you are not a groupie in somebody else's show. You are the headliner in your own story. So I just did one on the groupie. I did one last week, was the green room, because we all need our safe space to go to, and I've got the tour manager. The whole year there's shows coming out, and they're all is the cornerstone of all of it. But when I think about all the different levels of what goes on to just put on a concert, like a big concert, it's so relatable to our own lives and the journeys that we want to take in our lives. And I'm just getting ready tonight to record the stage fright one, because we all have so much fear. And so I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This makes so much sense to me. And who doesn't love music? So I just, a couple weeks ago, I created Trauma Rock Stars Songs That Saved Us Spotify channel. So I have a ton of songs that have really helped me get through my journey. And now I've got, supporters and listeners starting to add their healing songs on too. So it's super fun. I think we have 35 now on there. So we're building this community because music can get you through so much. And it's so powerful, what music can do. So I think the concert framework, it helps you relate to where you are in your journey, but people can, because who doesn't love music?
I know music is certainly a huge part of the healing journey for so many survivors, whether you are listening to music, maybe during, certain dressing changes or therapy that you want to get through, or you have certain songs that just really resonate with you if you're having a bad day or a good day, both, both of them. So yes, I know music is certainly a big part of a lot of survivors' journeys. So, and we'll definitely make sure we have your podcast and that Spotify channel linked below, because I'm sure our listeners will want to check that out as well.
Yeah, that's really fun to be able to put that together.
Mm-hmm. I also think we have some articles on music therapy too, Rachel, that we could link in there. Because I know, now that you're talking music, right, especially even for those caregivers listening, it's so funny. My husband kind of has it, I think, like programmed into his brain that when he knows I'm going through something difficult, he turns music on. And I won't forget, like, there are times where he knows I've been like dealing with something in the hospital or whatnot. And sometimes I'll turn around and the music will be on. And I'm like, did you turn that on? Like, he knows that when there's a difficult moment of something that I don't really want to do, that the music will help kind of drown some of that out. And I think that's really important for, right, like caregivers to remember too, is that music therapy is a really great thing. So if you have that loved one that can provide you with that, right? Like my husband knows what to put on and exactly what to play in those moments. And so I think that's really important that you have that as it's an easy thing that you can go to on your phone, whether if you're going through something difficult, maybe you're having a bad day and you're getting emotional. Like my husband knows what to put on depending on that, and knowing like, okay, is that something we can use together as a tool to help get through a difficult time?
Oh, you'll have to give me some of your songs. I'll add them.
My husband's really good about it. We have different, like, there was the wound room like changes that we used for music, and like we would use those songs because he knew that I enjoyed listening to them, but also, that were helpful. There was like the ones that I needed when I was just going through something difficult that I didn't want to deal with. And so he's really good about being able to understand that, but also we've always connected on music. So it's really nice if you have that music. Music's already a big part of your life to be able to use that. But I know the hospital that I worked with, Orlando Health, I do know they also had some music therapy folks coming in with guitars and stuff. And I think that is so important because it does help take you out of like the environments that you're in too. So
it is. It's so therapeutic. And to hear other people's songs that helped get them through, I've been loving it because some of them are songs I've never heard before. And I'm like, this is incredible. So I'm getting introduced to some new artists. And so it's really nice.
I think that was our question last season, Rachel, was right. Like if there was a song that was like something that you resonated with, and then we went with that one. So we had a whole playlist of songs from last season too that were, and we got some weird ones too. So you're like, didn't see this coming.
Well, kind of speaking, I would love to kind of ask Tracy that for you. I know it's not our final question to Amber's point anymore, but maybe what's a song that really resonates to you with your healing journey, or a song that maybe you'd recommend our listeners to listen to?
There's so many out there, but I love Fight Song by Rachel Padden. I love that song. I love a lot of Pink songs. A lot of her songs have been really, really helpful for me. And I even like, Hallelujah. I love that song, is incredible. I love Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Even songs like that, depending on your mood, you can rock out or you can chill out, depending on what you need to hear. But they're all supposed to help, lighten your mood and take that pressure off, that weight, that we carry around when we start to get anxiety or stressed out or upset. So there's so many songs out there, so many amazing songs out there that have helped. And, but I love Fight Song.
A fun fact, I've met Rachel Platten a couple of times. So she's really sweet and very nice in person. So you'll, I feel like I also don't want to listen to music if I've heard the artist isn't a nice person. And so.
Oh, I know. Well, I've got stories for you, but that's all.
But I've met her a couple times back in college before she was famous. And I always like to say, like, I met her before she was cool, right? Like she was one of those like college coffee shop bands that would come and perform for us.
Fun.
And then she hit it really big after that song. And I'm to this day, I'm like, yeah, I knew her. Like, it's fun to say you knew somebody before they were actually really like famous. But she is like genuinely I think one of the nicest artists I've ever had the pleasure of like getting to meet. And she is just as genuine as she sounds.
And I think that song has helped so many people. Like, I'm not the only one. I think it's just helped so many people. And it gives you empowerment. And that's what I want people, to know. Like, you have all the power in the world to heal, but it's what you see when you look in the mirror. Until you see that beautiful human being in the mirror, a lot's not going to change. And that takes a lot of work. It's scary, but now, honestly, I used to be so subconscious of my scars and being in a bathing suit, things like that. I don't even care anymore. To me, I'm like, you know what, you want to ask. I'll talk to you about, but don't stare and be rude. Just ask me a question and I'll tell you what happened. But I look at it now, like my scars, they're where I've been. They're not where I'm going. So it's just something that happened to me. And I've got everybody. I don't think there's a person on the planet that does not have some kind of scar on their body. Some are just worse than others, but there's a great story to come with it, a great survival story, a great empowerment story that comes, around them. And, it's so important to share, like, cause that's why I want with my show, I want everybody to know your story is important. And trauma is trauma. Like, if you're listening to us right now and you haven't been burned, but you've had other trauma in your life, your trauma isn't any worse or less than ours, because we're burn survivors, or burn thrivers, I should say. I want people to, because we're so hard on ourselves. And I just want people to be gentler to yourself and understand that, your journey. And that's another cool thing about it. Like, your healing journey is totally yours. You call all the shots. You decide how you want to heal. Like, that's what gave me my power back. Because I was kind of not, there's anything wrong with therapy, but I sat with therapists and I just felt like I was talking in circles. So I started doing a lot of research and I found these other modalities out there for healing and building your self-esteem and working on, that positive self-talk. And so I was able to kind of customize my own journey on my terms. And everybody has that power, works for you, but learn from other people, what's worked for them too, and what hasn't, and find things that resonate with you, and then customize your journey that makes sense for you. There's no textbook of right or wrong.
No, it's such a good point of, everyone's healing journey is different. What works for one person may not work for another, but you just kind of have to find and explore and see what works best for you and not give up too, especially if maybe the first few things you try, and whether that's therapy or even, meditation is a whole practice. It's not something that you're good at right away. You have to learn and get, work on that. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is time. Clearly is it's going to take time regardless of what direction or what path you choose. It's going to take some time to get there.
And some survivors take 5 minutes, some take 5 years, right? It's going to depend on that.
Or decades.
On that topic, I think you talk a lot about finding your voice. What advice would you have for someone that's maybe still afraid to speak their truth?
I think that, again, we lead from fear, and because I think we're afraid if we change. I talk about this every single day on my show, and all my episodes. I think understand what the fear is, like put a name to it, because healing is scary, because I think people are afraid that their lives are going to change drastically by healing. But I want people to understand that your life is going to change, but it's going to be for the better. And when you start your healing journey, you've got to set boundaries, because if you're a people pleaser, if you just carry everybody's weight, if you're giving everybody the same access to you, but they haven't earned it. I want people to be conscious of like who they're giving their energy deposits to, and understand that you have to give yourself that space to heal and set boundaries. Like healthy boundaries are so important. And a lot of times, like when I started, some people just fell off naturally because they just, they weren't able to handle maybe my healing journey because they were going through their own stuff, or they just weren't authentic. Maybe they just weren't authentic and they were surface level kind of people. You're going to learn that quickly. But what happens is it opens up the universe for all these new, amazing people to come into your life. And some of my best friends and supporters are people I didn't even know a couple of years ago, but it's because it's opened up a whole new world. So I want people, like some of your biggest supporters in life, you don't even know yet. So I want people to get excited about the healing journey, not scared of it, because you've already been through the worst. Look at, we're all burn survivors. We've been through the worst of it. What is the worst that's going to happen? You can handle it. And so you need to look in the mirror and be like, wow, I have been through so much, and give yourself credit for what you've been through already, and realize that the healing part can be a beautiful, amazing journey, and get excited about it, because the world is so incredible once you start being who you're really supposed to be.
I think it's important too that you talked about like not being afraid to share, but also like recognizing, I think for myself and my personal experience, right, I was afraid to share in the beginning when things were really difficult, but I know I began to share in my own way on Instagram and the stories that I would share. And I think what encouraged me to continue to do that was the positive response I received. Yes. I think sometimes we're afraid to get a negative response because what would people think? And so I think sometimes that scares survivors, right? Whether it's getting comments out in public or getting negative comments on social media. I think sometimes that can also put that fear and anxiety in your head of, like, I don't want to share because of whatever scary thing that might happen. So I think getting past that is one thing. Getting over the fear is another, but everybody can do that in their own time, in their own way, right? Like sharing their stories. Definitely important. And Rachel, I know we have a couple ways with the Phoenix Society that we can do that, whether it's sharing your story, written form, joining this podcast and sharing your story. There's lots of different ways we can do that.
And when I started the podcast, I was doing it because I was like, oh my gosh, there are so many healing modalities out there. The world needs to know about all of these. I was doing it for that reason, just so people can listen to other survivors and, like we were saying, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and they can kind of piecemeal what maybe resonated with them, not understanding that me telling my own story was probably the most therapeutic way for me to heal, that I never needed to sit in front of a therapist. This is therapy. And if like you were saying, it's scary to put yourself out there, and you get some, there's always going to be the naysayers and the negative people. But I'm like, I used to live with kids driving by my house calling me Scarface. What's the worst that's going to happen? What are they going to say? Because I remember somebody said to me a couple years ago, actually, I was in the grocery store, and they weren't saying that out of care and love. They were being snarky and an ass, to be honest. And they're like, what happened to your face? And if that had been a couple years before, I would have like thought I was going to have a heart attack. I wouldn't have even known what to do. But because I had already started my healing, I go, well, I don't know. Why don't you tell me what happened to yours first? And it gave me the strength. And they were like, oh, they weren't expecting to hear that back. And I'm like, what, hopefully that person will never say something like that to somebody again. But I had the strength to be able to do that. And to be totally honest with you, I felt so empowered saying that back to them instead of it tearing me down and making me upset. I was the complete opposite. And it probably wasn't the most mature thing for me to say back to somebody, but you know what? It was not, they weren't saying it out of kindness. You can just feel it, And so that's one thing, like that, talking about what you've been through. You don't have to announce it to the world like I have. You don't have to have it all over social media, but find somebody that you can be your authentic self. And I think with setting boundaries, you have to be able to tell people what you need. It's so hard for us to ask for what we need. So if you just need to vent, just say, I need to vent. I don't want to comment. I just need to vent. Or if you need advice, make sure you're asking it from the right people who can give you the right advice, and let them know, I need advice. You've got to be very specific, because I think we all think everybody's mind readers, and you can't expect people that are on this journey with you while you heal to understand what you need, because I think a lot of people are afraid to say and ask questions. So give them that green light that they can do that.
Definitely. I think that's great advice for anyone, survivor or healing from trauma or not, is, people aren't mind readers. I know I fall into that trap a lot of just assuming that folks know what I need when I need it. So I know it's something I'm still working on. Related to my healing.
Me too. Yeah, me too. I don't have all the answers, of course, because I still, and that's another thing I want to let people know, like you could be healing and you could be feeling great, and then all of a sudden something happens, or you get triggered and you feel like you get set back 10 steps, right? But what I've realized after doing a lot of reflection on that, it's not that you're really being set back 10 steps. It's you hadn't learned the lesson yet. So what lesson is that trying to teach you? Hone into that, write down how you're feeling, put a name to it, really understand it. And then you'll end up right back where you started. But it's just those setbacks are just triggers, because we just haven't learned the lesson yet fully. So look at it more like that than it's a negative thing. It's more of a positive thing than anything.
For sure. Well, I want to save time to make sure we talk about, you have an upcoming book called Rockstar Resilience. You're a hot mess, embrace it and own it. Do you want to tell readers a little bit about that book before we close out, and kind of what inspired you to write that?
Well, it's done, the memoir. It's actually in my editor's hands as we speak. I actually wasn't going to write a book. I'm not a writer. It was never even in my radar, but not to freak your, listeners out too much, but I had two within a couple weeks of each other. I had two different, a medium and a psychic on my show. And after offline, they both said to me, I've got a message for you. Are you open for a message? And I'm like, sure, of course. Cause I'm like, always open to hear anything. And both times my grandfather went to them and told them, I need to write a book about my story. And neither one of them knew each other or knew about this. And when the second one said the same thing to me, they're like, would it surprise you if your grandfather was here? And I'm like, I know what he's going to say. He's probably like, this kid's not listening. I've got it. So that's what kind of planted the seed, was that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I kind of put it off for a few months, 5-6 months. And then I was thinking about it, and somebody kept bugging me about it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit down and get the first couple chapters were super difficult getting those. But once I got done with the first 2 chapters, it was like the floodgates opened. And so I've got stories in there about the music business. I've got, stories in there about my love life, some of the disastrous ones. I've got stories in there about my healing journey, about stuff I've learned, where I am now. So I'm hoping that the book will be out by the holidays. And I want people to know, like, that's what I realized. I was a hot mess, but that's the thing. Your hot mess can be your superpower. So embrace that, embrace what you've been through, because that is how you grow and you touch other people that might need you, to help them. And so when I realized, like, yeah, I am a hot mess, and believe me, my healing journey, it was massive. I mean, I'm dealing with 2 major traumas and all this stuff, and it was massive. But when I realized, like, it's okay to be a hot mess, like, how can I turn that into a positive? So it just flowed. So like I said, the book hopefully will be out by the holidays. I'm super excited about it.
Well, we'll definitely make sure that we link your website in our show notes to make sure that if anyone is interested in getting their own copy, to be able to follow you and be able to check in when it's out. Exciting news for you. And I know Rachel will make sure all of that ends up in our show notes today.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll be doing a big pre-sale campaign and everything in a couple months, and giving away some fun stuff with it and everything. So I'm pretty excited.
Super exciting.
Awesome. Well, Tracy, thanks so much for coming on today. We do have 2 final questions that I know we want to ask. So Amber, I will let you go ahead and ask our first one.
And I change it up on you. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's your question. You can ask whatever you want.
A couple of weeks ago, I need to pick a question, and I've been dragging my feet. So we always ask our guests 2 quick final questions. So this season, we're in season 9, like we talked about. What's the best thing that's on your calendar for the next few months? And I think maybe there was already a dead giveaway there, but
yeah, the book launch. I'm so excited about it. So yeah.
Do you have plans for your book launch of what you're going to do? Is music going to be involved?
Yeah, there is. I'm starting to come up with some thoughts on that, and I'm hoping to do a launch in a couple different cities. So I'm working on that, and so I'm, it's going to be busy the next few months, but I'm really excited. I'm really proud of it, and it's all me. Every single letter and period and comma in there is all me. So I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it, because I try to add a comical twist to things too. You'll see if you go to my website, I have a shirt on that says, "At least my trauma made me funny." So I
saw that. I like that shirt.
Humor to it, and not just be so heavy all the time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely think adding that humor and just a little lightness to some of the heaviness can work well. Well, with that said, it is time for our final question, which is our Phoenix Partner question today, sponsored by Buses by the Beach. So their question is, if someone listening is in the hardest part of their journey today, what would you want them to hear?
Take a breath. Give yourself some space, and give yourself some time to reflect, like, what is so hard right now? Take some time for yourself. I know everybody's so busy and have families, and it's probably so hard to get some quiet alone time, but even give yourself 15 minutes just to sit down. And if you have to write it down, like, I love my journal. If you have to sit down and just write, what is so hard about it? Like, identify what part of this is so difficult, because that's when the easy parts isn't what takes you to the next step. It's the difficult. So, like, dive into it head first and figure out why, and give yourself time to, if you have to grieve. Like, that was one thing with me. I had to grieve the life that I never got to have, because when you're burned, your life changes forever. So I had to allow myself to grieve that. Like, what could my life have been like if I hadn't been through this? And so give yourself time to, really understand, like, what's so difficult about it. If you can put a name to it, a feeling to it, and understand the why, it helps you release it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it's another good time to, whether you have a music that maybe can help boost your mood, and having that playlist or something like that can always help if you're having a tough day as well.
Or reach out to somebody. You have your show, we have our shows. Like, there's so many people out there that are ready to, if you need help, we can put you in touch with somebody, or just send us a message. I love hearing from people. Like, people, I love what you're doing, but I'm struggling right now. Okay, well, what are you struggling? What exactly are you struggling with? It helps to talk to like-minded people that really understand.
Absolutely. Well, we are so grateful that you've joined us today, and we're able to share your message with everyone. We'll add some of those show notes, and all the things we talked about today. I think maybe, Rachel, we can add some guided meditations. If Tracy has any suggestions, we'll make sure we put those in there as well, because I also am a big fan of meditation as well. So we'll make sure that hits. But thank you for your time today, and we look forward to seeing that launch of your new book. Congrats again.
Thank you so much. I love being on here. It's like a full circle moment for me.
Awesome. Well,
thank you so much, Tracy.
Bye, Tracy.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Girls with Grafts. If you are enjoying this content, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.